So slavery is generally considered amoral. It's actually seen as pretty reprehensible today. I mean, it's illegal in almost every industrialized country. I mean, to own another person as property, it is wrong legally and morally. But that wasn't always the case. Really, slavery as an institution has been around longer than it's not been around, with evidence for it dating back to almost 3,500 BC in Mesopotamia. And there's also references to it in the Bible. Leviticus 25:44 reads, "Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy your slaves." Whoa! What's the deal with that? Does the Bible condone slavery? If slavery is a moral issue, then why does God seem to be okay with it? Is this just an uncomfortable truth that we need to accept if we want to be a Christian? And what does the Bible have to say? Let's take a look. Attention, bargain shoppers. So slavery does mean different things to different people, depending on what part of the world you live in or what period of history we're talking about. And one thing I don't want to do is fluff it up, try to make a potentially uncomfortable subject more palatable. But context is incredibly important when trying to understand the Bible. What do I mean? Well, in America, for example, slavery meant, for a long time, white people owning black people as property. They weren't paid, they had no rights, and they were subject to constant dehumanization, abuse, and horrifying living and working conditions. In America, slavery is inextricably tied to racism, and it involves the oppression and subjugation of a people group based on the color of their skin. But this is not how slavery was back in the day, back with the ancient Hebrews. See, slavery back then was not based on race. I mean, there's all different kinds. Sometimes you would have a people group that was conquered by another people group and then they'd be enslaved. But it was used as more of an economic tool. In fact, the word slave in the Bible can oftentimes be translated as bondservant. This more than a true slave as we would think about it today. Someone might have owed a debt and voluntarily agreed to go into slavery for a period of time. Oftentimes they were paid too. So there's a popular verse about slavery, Ephesians 6:5, which reads, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ." The Greek word used here for slave is doulos, and is used to describe everything from slaves to workers to servants. So when the Bible is talking about slavery, it's talking more about a lifetime bondservant than an oppressed slave based on their race, which would be like the first thing that comes to mind for somebody living in America today. Now, I'm not trying to say that makes it better or it's somehow okay, not at all, but that is the context of these verses. So when Paul writes, "Slaves, obey your masters," is he trying to say that slavery as an institution is totally fine and should continue on as is? I don't think so. A couple of thoughts on that. So first of all, many of the Bible verses on slavery, and in fact many of the Bible verses in general, are concerned less about world politics and about how things should be versus how they are, and more about personal conduct and accountability. And remember, the Jewish people had a very personal relationship with slavery. They themselves were slaves to the Egyptians. They were abused. They were taken advantage of and treated unfairly. And God did not want them, once they were free, to just turn around and do the same thing to other people. That's why we have verses on conduct like Colossians 4:1, which reads, "Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven." The Bible lays out expectations about how slaves should be treated, and it takes pains to clearly communicate that the way they should be treated should be just and fair. Now, that doesn't mean that slavery is what God intends, or that it's even a good thing, but slavery was an institution. It was a part of life, period. In the Garden of Eden, God wasn't like, all right, here's Adam and Eve, and here is their slave. The corrupting nature of sin is at play here. Addressing it is not the same thing as condoning it. When Jesus said in Mark 12:17, "Give to Caesar's the things that are Caesar's, and give to God the things that are God's," he wasn't justifying the existence of the Roman Empire or their occupation of the Jewish people by telling them to pay their taxes. He wasn't saying the Romans were good. He was giving instructions for people personally on how to act within the boundaries and institutions that are already in place. Again, it's that personal conduct aspect of Scripture. Slavery existed. Ignoring it, not writing about it, would not have helped. You could even say not writing about slavery would have given people the green light to do whatever. God didn't say we can't abuse our slaves. No, the Bible clearly says give to them what is right and fair, as we would want our heavenly masters to do with us. But there's also a trajectory of slavery. God didn't say, well, it exists and we just have to deal with it. And there's two types of slavery. There's slavery as in being controlled by another person. And there's also being a slave to sin, having to deal with the negative consequences of our actions and the actions of other people. And the overall trajectory in the Bible is freedom in both regards. Isaiah 58:6 says, "Is it not the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke?" See, God's desire for all of his people is freedom. Physical freedom is one part of the coin, spiritual freedom is the other part of the coin. And both will be available to all when we enter God's kingdom. These earthly lives are temporary. And in heaven, every people, every race, every tribe and nation will stand together as brothers and sisters in worship of one God. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe. It does help out the channel. Also leave a comment below if you feel like it. I'll leave the verses used today in the description. My name is Adam. This is Bargain Bin Theology. And remember, you get what you pay for.